Well, Bitcoin is among the big movers on Wall Street today. Crypto's been seeing wild swings as investors wait on a decision from the Securities and Exchange Commission to approve spot Bitcoin ETFs. There was a report early on in the day that the SEC had approved the iShares ETF. Bitcoin spiked on that news, but pared those gains after BlackRock said the fund was still under review. Joining us now, Matt Hougan, Bitwise Chief Investment Officer. He's got his hat in the ring as well with these offerings, and everybody's been waiting to see if approval was going to come, Matt. What are you guys hearing? Any kind of glimmer of news from the SEC, and what do you think is the holdout here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Of course, I can't speak to Bitwise's filing or any specific filing, but I do think the tea leaves are pointing toward a potential approval. You know, we have major issuers like BlackRock coming into the market saying we're ready for a spot Bitcoin ETF. Firms like Bitwise, who have been doing this for years, have submitted additional research into the space. I think the time is right for a spot Bitcoin ETF. The SEC has previously been worried about market manipulation, about a lack of maturity in the market. But the Bitcoin market of today is not the Bitcoin market of a few years ago. It's an institutional market with institutional players and institutional custody. And we're ready for an ETF that will make it cheaper and safer for Americans to invest in this exciting asset class.
So Matt, when do you think, and I realize, listen, you're reading tea leaves here, but when do you think the SEC could approve that spot Bitcoin ETF, Matt? Are you thinking, by year end? And when they do, Matt, do you think the SEC should approve all the Bitcoin ETFs here at once?
Yeah, so the way this works is there's a calendar-based system for every ETF that is applied for. And the date I would circle on your calendar is January 10th. That's when the next ETF hits its final review date. The SEC has to say yes or no by that point. Towards the second part of your question, if we look at what happened in the Ethereum futures ETF space, where those ETFs just launched 2 weeks ago, what we saw was the SEC lined up multiple providers to launch at once. I suspect the most likely scenario is the SEC will want to do the same thing here, give everyone an equal starting place, increase competition. And so I would circle that January 10th date. I don't mean on that date. I mean sometime between now and that date, we will find out if we are finally going to get this ETF.
Matt, it's so fascinating to me the timing that all of this is sort of coming to a head, because it's the same time that Sam Bankman-Fried is on trial and that there's a lot of scrutiny about the sort of underbelly of crypto, if you will. It doesn't seem to have dampened the chatter and the enthusiasm around the new product offerings that are coming. Why do you think that is? There's sort of an interesting juxtaposition here.
It's a great point. And if you've been in this market for a number of years, Bitwise has been helping investors access crypto for almost 6 years. The reason it's having that unusual effect is we've seen this story before. When the SEC cracked down on illegal ICOs in 2018, that set the stage for the massive bull market we saw in 2019, 2020, and 2021. When we saw Silk Road shut down and the sort of Mt. Gox collapse, we cleared out that infrastructure mess. That set the stage for the huge rally we saw in 2015, 2016, and 2017. So long-term crypto investors have seen this story before. You deal with the excesses of the past, you wash those out of the system, and you build from a stronger foundation. That's what we're doing here, out with the FTX, in with the ETF, and in with the mainstream era of crypto. That's why we've been rallying all year. Bitcoin's the best performing asset class in the world this year, up almost 70%. And I think we're set up well for the next couple of years to come.
Matt, all due respect, Asha, I've heard that story before, right? I mean, even when it hasn't been accompanied by a big event, not you, but like people who love Bitcoin always love Bitcoin and say it's going to go up over the long term, no matter what is happening in the external world. And also, when you talk about the washout, I mean, the one surrounding FTX, who knows what's going on with Binance, we're talking about larger numbers here than we were in those past situations.
I think that's a reasonable thing, and I like that you flagged Binance. There are still some things to worry about in the crypto space, to be sure. There's Binance to worry about. There's, people have concerns about Tether. There's risk in the US regulatory ecosystem. So this is not a riskless investment. Bitcoin is extremely volatile. Crypto is extremely volatile as well. But it is worth noting that we have rallied almost from the day that FTX's news came out, as if people were waiting for the worst of the news to get out before we built a new base forward. So I'm not saying there's any guarantee that we continue to rally from here, but I'm saying that if you look at the balance of the pros and the cons, the likelihood of a spot Bitcoin ETF versus the likelihood of another one of these negative black swans, I feel a lot more confidence that we're moving into ETF land, moving into a mainstream era. So is it risk-free? Of course not. But is there significant opportunity and upside? Of course. And that means that investors should size their portfolio appropriately, not hold more Bitcoin than they can afford to lose. But it doesn't mean you should ignore this space, because a lot of institutions, a lot of financial advisors are coming into the market. And that leaves me pretty excited for the next 12 and 24 months.
And Matt, that actually leads me to my next question. If and when the SEC, Matt, approves these spot Bitcoin ETFs, where would you think the investor interest is really going to come from here? Do you think is it retail investors, Matt? Is it institutional investors? Is it RIAs? Where do you think?
Yeah, it's absolutely RIAs. Look, retail investors can already access crypto. You can buy Bitcoin on your phone. You can buy it through PayPal. You can buy it through Coinbase. But financial advisors can't. And the important thing to remember is that financial advisors control about the same amount of money as mainstream institutions, and 2 or 3x as much money as self-directed retail investors. The really only way we can get that chunk of the market, which is, many trillions of dollars, is through an ETF. And I think, therefore, the ETF will transform the market. The analogy I would make is back to the approval of spot gold ETFs in 2004. Before that, retail investors could buy gold, but advisors couldn't. And what you saw eventually is $100 billion move into gold ETFs over a period of 10 years. That was, of course, positive for prices. We got 11 straight up years in gold. I'm not saying that will happen in Bitcoin, but I do think you'll see financial advisors move into this market en masse, and I think that will be positive for the asset class.
Finally, Matt, I do want to ask you a question about competition within the ETF market, because there are a lot of proposals out there, a lot of companies trying to get their offerings out there. Of course, there's Grayscale, which already has its trust on the market. And so we'll see if people convert that. We've got BlackRock, which is a giant in the industry. And if you look at other commodity ETFs, while there might be a bunch out there, usually there's one that's sort of far and away the leader. So how do you compete in a market like that?
The beautiful thing about Bitwise competing in the crypto market is it's all we do 24/7, 365. And as you know, the news in this market moves extremely fast. I think when advisors want to choose someone to partner with to access the crypto market, they're going to want to make sure that they're following the news in Washington, that they're on the phone with technologists, that they're talking to venture capitalists. So if they have questions, the provider will have answers. So Bitwise feels comfortable moving into this space. We're excited for the race to begin. And, the more the merrier. May the best team win.
All right, Matt Hougan, thank you so much for joining us today, Matt. That was great insight.
Thanks for having me.